Welcome to Between the Rows, a weekly podcast by Glacier Farm Media. I'm your host this week, Laura Rance. The prairies received some badly needed moisture in the form of rain and snow recently. Farmers were happy enough to get it no matter what form it took. Well, in this week's show, we'll be hearing from one Saskatchewan farmer who inadvertently tapped into a shower of goodwill. We're also talking to a veritable dragon lady of entrepreneurship in Canada about her plans to help this country's value-added food processing sector grow in all the right ways. And of course, we'll be talking about the markets. But first, here's a word from our sponsor.
Get a jump on the season without interest slowing you down. Join FBN now through August 10th and apply for 0% financing on purchases made during your first 30 days and pay no interest until 2022. To learn more about how you can sign up and lock in your 0% rate, go to fbn.com. Financing provided by Farm Credit Canada. By applying for credit through FCC, you consent to FBN providing your information to FCC or its designated third-party service providers. Not all applicants will qualify. Only available to new transacting FBN members in Canada, excluding Quebec.
Most of us know Arlene Dickinson as one of the dragons on the popular CBC television show celebrating raw and undercapitalized entrepreneurship in Canada. Dickinson has since moved on to bigger things with the formation of Venture Park, a business growth ecosystem designed to help young companies not only find the capital to grow, but also the mentorship, marketing, and innovation supports they need to succeed. I spoke to her about her idea and the type of entrepreneurs she's hoping to help. Here's our conversation. I wanted to talk a little bit about the language you've chosen to describe Venture Park and some of the things that you're doing there, the business growth ecosystem and the communities. What's the strategy behind that language and how do you hope that will change the conversation?
Well, the strategy was, if you think about what's going on in Canada and our expertise in the food and agricultural and health space, what you see is a lot of innovation happening, but not a lot of growth opportunity, ability for businesses to really scale, to not just meet local demand, but also global demand. And so the strategy was to put together expertise from a variety of areas that I know are necessary in order to scale a business successfully. And those include capital, marketing, programming and mentorship, media networks to help amplify the voice of what's going on out there. So all of these things together, and kitchen innovation space, all of these things put together, these different businesses, well, while they do different things, they all have the same purpose, which is to really help businesses in the consumer goods space to scale and become, global brands. So I think, my belief is you can't just, everyone needs to be experts at what they do, but if we all have singular purpose, we can actually work together and play off each other and offer these varying resources to companies that are in need of those resources and help them at the moment when they need them the most. So, listen, I think it's difficult to grow a consumer goods company at the best of times. It's particularly difficult in Canada. And I think this ecosystem will help grow a lot of companies and help them scale in the way that they deserve to.
I mean, we see a lot of venture capital funds. We see a lot of work done in business development, but never in one big package. How unique is this approach?
It's the first of its kind in Canada, and I'm pretty excited about that, but I'm more excited about the opportunity to really bring something together that I think is going to have meaningful impact in Canada. You're right, we see a lot of marketing firms, we see a lot of venture capital firms, we see a lot of organizations and accelerators and incubators, we see media firms, but what we don't see is how they can all be put together to really, as I say, help businesses along every stage of their growth and every need that they have to grow. And I think what's unique about this is that we really are, again, singularly focused. And, Canadians are innovative, they're adaptive, they're resilient. And through the pandemic, at a particularly hard time, you still see entrepreneurs out there trying to build companies, and they deserve the support that we can give them.
So what are the top trends, or as you describe it, the new and emerging consumer trends that are driving these changes or this approach for you?
Well, I don't think it's any secret that what the pandemic has done for all of us, Laura, has created a potentially I guess a different look at ourselves. We've thought about our health differently than we ever have before. We've thought about the food we consume differently than we ever have before. Like when this first happened, everybody was worried about food supply and where they were going to be able to get, are they going to be able to get the food they need to be able to survive? And are they getting healthy food? And then the other thing is, of course, we're worried about our just basic health. Are we taking care of ourselves? Are we able to make sure that we give our bodies the best chance at defense? And I think these things that are happening are not just in Canada, but they're around the world. And so this is, to me, there's never been a more important moment in time for us to reassess what we want from ourselves and our physical bodies and what we need to consume in order to maintain our health moving forward and to live well. Because living well doesn't mean, I don't mean living well as it relates to success, I mean living well as it relates to our health.
We've really been prompted to reevaluate our values, right? Throughout all this. It's been quite an experience for a lot of families.
It really has. I mean, we've had to think hard and long about what it is that we care about and how and who we want to support in terms of our local businesses, our local entrepreneurs, and also starting to understand, the impact we have on not just the economy through entrepreneurialism, but also the environment through our acts of consumerism. And so these things are, I think, as you said it very well, we really have had to reassess our values.
Wondered if you could just define for me what the common characteristics are of the investment opportunities that you're engaging with.
Well, they all share a few traits in common. They certainly all have the opportunity to scale. I mean, when we invest, we want to make sure that these businesses can scale, that they have access to the right resources, not just human resources, but also ingredients and supply chain, as I said, so they can scale. They have aggressive and meaningful entrepreneurs who really want to build business and make a difference. So they're aggressive, not just in terms of growth, but aggressive in terms of their social thinking, the way they want to give back as well as they want to scale their businesses. They have a common idea on how business can grow from Canada, and they have a belief that they can do it from here. And they're doing things that are answering market need. I mean, these are businesses that really are starting to understand, what the market needs, and they're addressing that market need by coming up with products that fit the market need. And that's something they all have in common.
Are these companies that are, focused primarily on the Canadian market, or are they looking to go offshore as well?
They're definitely companies that can export. I mean, we want companies that can grow outside of Canada. We want them to grow from Canada, and we want them to be able to expand into international markets. So whether that's the US marketplace or European markets or Asian markets, we want to be able to supply to the world. I say this all the time, but Canada's been really good at shipping our raw ingredients all around the world. I mean, we've done such a good job of saying to people, here's some raw, great ingredients, go commercialize with them and turn them into products. And then what we'll do is we'll buy them back from you. And
Exactly.
We'll them. I mean, it's just so crazy. And so, the time has come when we start to go, wait a minute, we have the intelligence, the resources, we have every piece of the pie. We just haven't made the pie. And it's time for us to make the pie and to sell it, right? And to not just sell it for the sake of, of course, for the sake of financial reward. I mean, business is about obviously profit at first, but people and planet are so important in that. So it is about people, planet, profit. It's about all of those things. And I get excited about what we can do. I'm tired of giving our ingredients away to everybody else to make into products.
How does what you're doing translate back to the farm and the primary producers?
I think I'm seeing more and more farmers and growers who are thinking about how can they actually create manufacturing facilities on their farm? How can they actually work with integrated offerings with, close production facilities that are near them? How can they actually contribute and reap the benefits of the last mile?
I guess with the digital technology, I mean, the whole prospect of traceability, I mean, does the producer story become part of the story for some of the food products that you're representing?
Oh, 100%. I mean, we have looked at a lot of deals lately where, being able to say, this was done on this farm in Saskatoon, or this was built, this was grown by this grower in Northern Alberta. The ability to trace back to the farm and to talk about, the true roots of the product and the roots of the farmer, and what it means to them to grow. I mean, we don't think about the creativity and the innovation of farmers enough. And so connecting the farmer to the consumer, I think, is a huge opportunity for us as consumers to learn more about farmers and the farm, because it's like, oh, they just somehow appear in a grocery store. Well, no, there's, oh, that lettuce just showed up. Well, no, it actually was grown, and there was actually people that were involved in that, and they actually planted and, and harvested and shipped and did all these things. And we need to get back to our roots more. I know I'm sounding a little bit perhaps idealistic here, but I really believe it to be true.
Do you see opportunities to directly invest in the primary sector, or do you see them as part of a value chain?
Our fund only invests in the consumer goods side of it and the last commercialization side, but we have definitely invested in the entire chain. Like if there's a farmer who actually is also producing and manufacturing, we invest. But I think there for sure is opportunity to invest in every aspect of it. I mean, it is part of a chain, yes, but that you can invest everywhere along the chain.
You referred to the food business as being an exciting business, and I guess there's lots of ways you could describe the business, but a lot of people do complain that it's very heavily regulated. We're chronically short of capital and labor, and you're in a very fickle, rapidly changing consumer market. I mean, a study comes out and says you should eat eggs, and everybody eats eggs, and a study comes out and says you shouldn't eat eggs, and everyone stops eating. How do you work in that environment, and how do you succeed in an environment that can change when you're making investments that are heavy investments, long-term investments? How do you navigate that space?
It is. People's patterns are changing. There's no two ways about it. Consumers are becoming better educated. They're starting to think harder about what it is they consume and why, as I said earlier. But we can't move with, the latest study that comes out and then consumers all go, oh my gosh, eggs are not good for me anymore. We have to continually be defending and marketing our products and services so that we can withstand those highs and lows, because one day they're bad and the next day they're going to be good again, right? So how do you make sure that you're in the market? And that's where marketing comes into play. That's where smart marketing comes into play. I think there's certainly a need for, I think, marketing that reaches consumers in a more effective way than has been happening from a lot of these associations that represent growers and producers. And so part of it is making sure your message is the one being heard, and making sure that you're being heard for your values, as opposed to just looking like you're trying to sell something. And I think consumers are smart. They will figure it out. They will stay where they know that they are getting value, and they're not going to be as reactive to the latest study. And in particular, in today's social world where a study goes out and the next day something comes out and disputes it, we can't react to that. What we've got to do is build things that we believe are really of value, and providing the right food and ingredients and opportunity for Canadians to, as I said, live well.
When you look back on this launch 5 years from now, how will you define success?
By the number of businesses we've helped to grow and scale. To me, and have we had impact in the agricultural sector? Have we had impact in the health sector? Have we helped entrepreneurs to build businesses that have actually had impact on Canadians' well-being and on the globe's well-being? And that will be defined, for sure, it's going to be defined in sales and distribution and brand recognition, but it's also going to be defined in terms of jobs and in terms of security of food supply and in terms of bringing talent into Canada as opposed to having it leave Canada, and bringing resources in Canada to the world in the form of finished products. There's so many things I'm looking forward to, and I'm really looking forward to celebrating not technology, because technology is great and it's got a lot of investment and everybody wants to put money into technology, but celebrating and supporting the foundation of what keeps us alive. And I think that is, that comes from food and health sectors. And so I'm very excited about looking to those metrics as part of the success that I think we're going to help create.
Well, thank you very much for joining me today, Arlene.
Thank you so very much. It was my pleasure. I thank you for being interested in what we're doing.
That was Arlene Dickinson talking about her new venture, Venture Park, a business growth ecosystem supporting food companies. This is Between the Rows. I'm your host, Laura Rance. Rob Stone was like a lot of farmers this spring, pouring hundreds of thousands of dollars into the dirt for this year's crop, all the while keeping an eye on the sky. It was clear from the start of seeding that without rain, and soon, all of these efforts would be for naught. So when clouds built up in the forecast, the Davidson, Saskatchewan farmer practically dared them to deliver. He tweeted out a pledge to donate $1,000 to charity if he got an inch of rain. Well, the idea took off faster than a prairie windstorm. I caught up with him to find out a little more about what happened. Hi, Rob. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Tell me a little bit about your farm.
Okay, we're basic grain and oilseed farm located in sort of south central Saskatchewan. Farm canola, lentils, wheat, and barley, and kind of dabbled with a few other crops in the past, corn and soybeans and peas and all those sorts of things. And so zero till, kind of using all the basic technology stuff on the farm is what we do. Kind of a family farm sort of thing.
And so everyone this year has been talking about how dry it is, and I'm assuming you've in the same boat as we are in southern Manitoba. Just how dry has it been for you so far this seeding season?
Well, it was one of those things where, yeah, farmers like to complain about how dry or wet it is or whatever, but it was becoming a bit more alarming this year. We hadn't really seen any significant rain since last July. Usually you have some sort of recharge later in the fall. In the past, we've had 4 and 5 inch rains in October that kind of start your subsoil off. But no, this year it was dry. We had some snow cover, but either it was dry snow or we were that dry or whatever else. There was no runoff. The dugouts didn't fill and all of those sorts of things. We're not directly cattle or livestock involved, but you notice those things, and certainly impacted our spray water supply. So you knew that we were kind of up into one if we didn't get some timely moisture. And as seeding progressed, it became a bit more of a thing.
And so, I mean, just what kind of thoughts go through your mind when you're out there sticking hundreds of thousands of dollars into the ground and you really don't know what's in store?
Well, you have a fairly good awareness what your insurance coverage is. So you're calculating that more than you probably should be, but you have an awareness of those things. And you also know that you're only as good as your next day of weather. But it becomes unsettling at some point where you see all of this potential with the markets and everything else to try and take advantage of some of these upward trends, but you at the same time can't do any forward pricing or anything else because it just wouldn't be responsible. So you're missing some opportunities, plus unable to just really see your way to having an outcome where there's going to be stuff above the ground. And so it's different, that's for sure.
What went through your mind when you did see some rain in the forecast?
Well, certainly, basically, seen this before. You just you write it off and say, well, there's hope, but you don't want to hold out too much hope.
How did this idea of turning this into an act of charity come to mind? I mean, just how did it pop into your head?
It was a pretty simple little thing. Like, it was just driving down the road in my old truck and, got a pallet of canola seed in the back or whatever else. And you're just thinking about the things that you've got to do today and whatever else. And the wind's picking up and you just get thinking, and all of a sudden you just, we should do something about this. And so I don't think that it's an active intervention that you can buy your way to buy your way to heaven or buy your way to a rain or anything else, but let's just do something fun and get our minds off the fact that that we all would really like to have a little help. I mean, all we need is 12 hours. We need 12 hours of something to help us out, or even less, to get some germination. It wasn't intended to be any type of a great campaign or anything else, but it was just something that I thought, well, I'll put that out there and see if a few people want to do a meaningful thing if we see something meaningful.
And so describe what happened next.
It was really interesting how, I guess, when you have like-minded people in the ag Twitter community experiencing like conditions, they are really ready to embrace some sort of a goal or something to look forward to, or some sort of objective. I mean, I think most people are very, very based on having something to look forward to, having a date in mind, and those sorts of things. And so, it really caught some traction with people that said, yeah, let's do this. If we have a good outcome, if we have some germination, if our crops are to catch, and by no means is this season over and complete and bins overflowing, but we've kind of checked that next box where we've got that first start, and people are very willing and want to share their good fortunes in whatever way they can, and celebrate some of our successes. I think maybe the way that we celebrate successes has been changed by exterior forces the last year or so. So that fellowship and that togetherness is important to people as always. So that's how I see it happening anyways, is that it was a sort of a dumb little idea that kind of took a hold, and I think it's done a lot of good. So that's great.
It must be gratifying, even though, as you say, when we were discussing this earlier, I mean, you didn't really do this to capture a lot of attention, but it must have been kind of fun to watch it take off.
It really is. I mean, a person would be lying if they don't kind of smile a little bit and say, gee, I did that. Everybody did that. Everybody that took hold of the idea and decided to promote it and share it and challenge other people with it are the ones that took the idea. But it sure is nice to be able to know that you had a part in that, for sure, and helping the bottom line of some great organizations as well.
So do you have any idea just how many people have taken you up on this?
I have no idea, to be honest. I mean, like, you can look at the Twitter analytics of tweets and all that sort of stuff, and like, it's been seen by 250,000 people. So that seems like quite a bit. But I mean, the actual number of people that would participate in Western Canada or whatever kind of reach it would be, I have no idea. I'd be really interested, I guess, when we kind of wrap it all up, if there would be some way of kind of learning from the charities that have been supported, what sort of trend there was for their bottom line, and if it was meaningful. But the best I can say is the political answer of I think it's a good amount. It seems like it's been, a lot of people have taken some time to promote that, as well as pay attention to making sure that the word gets to the proper people.
There seem to be some favorites in the string of tweets that I was looking at, and stars certainly popped up there more than once. What were some of the other charities that you saw, being named by people pledging to support?
Yeah, I think like stars is definitely a popular one, and it makes sense, because all of the philanthropy of prairie folk and everything else is we kind of have to look after ourselves sometimes with our distance and need for services and those things. And STARS connects the province quickly. So a great organization. Other organizations like Telemiracle, some local daycare initiatives in various other areas. I'd seen some people supporting some of those. My personal choice was Saskatchewan 4-H Council. My ability to probably sit here and have a chat with you was affected strongly by some of my training, public speaking, things in 4-H. So, and I'm sure that there's many other ones that are very important to people locally that I suspect will be getting a bump as well. I'd seen some, yes, there's some kind of individual organizations and funds, where there's been some tragedy over the last couple of years. I've seen those being supported as well. So it's great that it provides a medium for all of those.
And I think you've been capturing some attention from outside of the farming community about this as well.
Yeah, that's it. It's interesting because don't spend a lot of time outside of my ag boundaries, but we'll be spending a little bit of time with on the morning edition tomorrow, or on the morning edition at some point, and talk to John Gormley. So that'll be pretty cool because I usually just yell at the radio when he's on, but I'm going to be on the radio, so that's neat. So I think the most important part to think about that is that it's a neat and cool experience. It's kind of nerve-wracking for me, but the most important part is that people realizing that people in agriculture, farmers, retailers, everybody in agriculture are genuine good people, and they really care about their communities. And you can see that in their actions, with or without a pledge and challenge from myself, with their actions at local charity events and auctions and all of that sort of stuff. But this really gives us our opportunity to let people see into what we're all about. And I want to make sure and take every opportunity that I can right now with I guess this sort of publicity to be able to share that message.
And so, I mean, it's certainly an opportunity to amplify just what we know happens in rural communities all the time, but to an audience outside of the farming community.
That's right. I mean, outreach in agriculture, I mean, you spend entire conferences trying to figure out how to communicate with consumers and your customers and all of that sort of stuff. And that kind of rolls through my head, where by no design of anyone's, this has given us a really good opportunity to we're just people and who care about our communities, and we enjoy being participants when we can.
Now, this last question is the one that every farmer wants to know. How much rain did you actually get?
We got 34 millimeters by our weather station based off of this last rain event. The best calculation was that we came up with probably about 12 millimeters out of the snow on Thursday. So, I mean, this is the starter, and it gets us through in-crop spraying, gets the weeds growing and everything else. But yeah, we are empty, and we're going to need more events like this in order to have the bins bust. But they do say you seed into the dust, the bins will bust. So we've done our part, and we were in the dust. So hopefully the nature continues to provide for us.
Well, thank you very much for joining me today, Rob.
Thank you.
That was Rob Stone of Davidson, Saskatchewan, a farmer who found out that rain gauges are good tools for giving. For our last item this week, I'm joined by Phil Franz Workington of Markets Farm. Hi, Phil. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Now, we've seen a big announcement this week, a new canola crushing plant built near Northgate, Saskatchewan by Sierra's Global Ag Corporation. What do we know about this company to start with?
They're based out of the States, but they've been seeing from getting more involved in Western Canada in the last little while. And I know they also have operations out in Ontario. I think they have port facilities out there in either Thunder Bay or farther to the east. So they're involved with they're becoming more and more involved in our grain sector in recent years.
So this crushing plant, I mean, how big a deal is it, do you think, on the domestic side here?
Yeah, well, their plans are for 1 million tons, 1.1 million tons capacity. Wow. So that is on top of, we've had, it seems canola crushing plants are very popular right now. We've had, seems everyone is getting involved. I know Richardson was expanding their capacity, and Viterra and Cargill were both announcing new plants in the last while. So if it's everything is, I don't think any ground has been broken on any of these plants yet, but if everything on paper comes through, we're looking at 4 to 5 million tons more of crushing capacity in Western Canada. all in Saskatchewan. I think all of the plants have been in Saskatchewan. So right now we do about 10 million tons a year. So that would up it to 14, 15 million if everyone's plans go through. So that's very large.
Typically, I think in the past, we've had like a 50-50 split between export seed and domestic crush. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, this year it's pretty much 10 million tons export, 10 million tons domestic, fairly evenly split. So
So
that
this is either going to change that ratio or we're going to be producing a lot more canola in Western Canada.
yeah, exactly. So the well, I know the canola council, they would probably like to see more grown, but it's a matter of agronomics, and there's only so much land to go around, and we can't necessarily seed canola everywhere without running into disease issues. So that will be a limiting factor. So at the end of the day, that it all implies prices are going to have to be firm to encourage farmers to keep growing it to meet all of this demand. But yeah, like you said, it could cut into exports as well. So we might see a shift in that balance.
Well, I guess the other thing, and I'm just wondering if this company is hedging its bets a bit because it's building right on the Canada-US border, and has that gives it easy access to export into the US, but can it also be importing canola if it needs to?
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility, but the Canada grows a lot more canola than the U.S. They do grow it up in North Dakota in those areas, so that is a possibility of bringing seed up from there to crush. But I think a more likely scenario is that the location will benefit for exports of the oil and meal, and a lot of that has to do with the US increasing demand for renewable fuels, and there's a large push under their new administration for renewable fuels and big expectations for biodiesel. And so canola will be the feedstock for biodiesel. And we're seeing that in Canada too. The I think it was Co-op had the Federated Co-op is having a plant in there in connection with one of these canola oil facilities that are being in the works. So it's a lot of it has to do with biodiesel, and so that the location will help move that down to the states where the demand for the biodiesel is.
So this really does bode well for pricing for Canadian canola, for producers growing it. We've seen some remarkably high prices, as we've been talking about in recent weeks, in the canola market. And I guess one of the questions that comes up is the last time we saw this was largely due to speculative funds flowing into the commodity markets. We've seen some strength in the stock markets lately. Are we going to see some money leave this market? Is that going to impact the pricing, or is this driven by other factors?
Yeah, that is a possibility, and there is speculative money in the market. But the difference this time around is that it's more, there's fundamental issues at play. Like in addition to the biodiesel issues that we talked about, there's just strong demand worldwide for vegetable oil in general and commodities in general, grains, oil seeds, everything. And there's been supplies have been deemed tight. So the underlying supply demand fundamentals are supportive as well. So that's not to say that fluctuations in the stock market that could easily lead to price swings in our grains and oilseeds, but on a relative standpoint, the grains and oilseeds should stay strong because they have this underlying story of that the demand is strong and supplies are tight, and it's looking like that story will continue as we have these stories of more demand coming on board.
And I guess we've seen some pretty significant rains over the last week or so in different parts of the prairies. Not everybody got the same amount, but I think people are generally more hopeful of getting a crop this year. How driven will the markets be by the weather going forward?
Yeah, definitely. That the weather will be the key market moving factor over the next few months. These larger issues of the stock markets and the world economic sentiment that will that's an overarching factor that you can't ignore. But the weather, will there be rain? Is it dry? That kind of thing. That's the bigger thing, and that will be key to watch. And like you said, the prairie saw so much needed rain recently, but it is still, the subsoil is still dry in a lot of areas, and will keep needing that moisture through the growing season, or it'd be very easy to spark a weather market. And we might not be able to go above those highs that we saw a few weeks ago, but a weather scare could easily see things jump up again, as we've seen some very wide price swings in all of the commodities in recent weeks.
Sounds like there's going to be lots to talk about in the coming months.
Yeah, there always is.
Well, thanks very much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
That was Phil Franz Workington, who writes for Markets Farm. That's all we have for you on this week's Between the Rows, but we'll be back again next week. I hope you'll join us. I'm Laura Rance.
Get a jump on the season without interest slowing you down. Join FBN now through August 10th and apply for 0% financing on purchases made during your first 30 days and pay no interest until 2022. To learn more about how you can sign up and lock in your 0% rate, go to fbn.com. Financing provided by Farm Credit Canada. By applying for credit through FCC, you consent to FBN providing your information to FCC or its designated third-party service providers. Not all applicants will qualify. Only available to new transacting FBN members in Canada, excluding Quebec.